everyone, I'm Maria and welcome or welcome back to my Nook. Today I'm starting a new reading vlog, which is honestly a thing for me. The last reading vlog I filmed happened in autumn last year, which was a couple of months ago at this point, and honestly I still have not edited it. Probably when you're seeing this reading vlog right here, I will also have posted the other one. So maybe the decision to film another reading vlog as of right now is not the best decision for my time and energy. I don't know yet. I'll figure that out as I go, I guess. But the reason why I want to film this reading vlog is because today I am starting a book that has been gifted to me kindly by one of my very good friends. And this book is called Trumpet by Jackie Kay. Now, the thing about this book and this gift is that the title and the name of the author are all I know about this book. No, that's a lie. The only other thing I know is that it might possibly be melancholic, because I unwrapped this gift from my friend, and the moment I wanted to turn it around and check what it's about, because that's what I do, he stopped me and said, no, I want you to accept the challenge of going into this book completely blind. He did write into the book a little note just saying that he wants to recommend this book to me because he really liked it. And I don't know anything about this book, which is quite the challenge for me indeed. Normally I like to know a lot about the books that I go into, not as in like I want to know the plot and everything that goes down or whatever, but I do tend to research the books that I read beforehand and try to figure out like, what is it about? What does the little synopsis say that it's about, and what is the general mood of things? Are there any trigger warnings, or did any of the people on BookTube read this book beforehand so I can see what they thought about it, you know, that sort of thing. I tend to be very picky and very specific in my book taste. And also, I'm a very slow reader. So while other people might say, okay, it takes me 1 or 2 days to read a 300-page novel, so even if I don't like it, it's not that much of a waste of time. I personally, it takes me up to 2 weeks to read a 300-page novel. So if at that point I realize I really did not like that book, it was more time consuming for me than for some other people. So that's also a reason why I tend to be more picky about the books that I read. The only books I don't really research are books in a series. If I've already read like the first book or the first couple of books in a series and I know that I liked those, then I sometimes pick up the next book in the series without knowing what exactly goes on in that, because I trust the book series and the author, if that makes any sense. But going into a book completely blind just never happens for me. And it's honestly quite the challenge. At the end of last year, 2025, I asked my friend whether this book is melancholic. I tend to be very melancholic towards the end of a year, and in those cases I don't need a book to like increase that mood, if you know what I mean. So I asked him if At least that he can tell me. And he told me he read the book quite a while ago, so he's not sure, but it might be melancholic. And I do know that it's not fantasy, which is the genre I typically read. But other than that, I know absolutely nothing. I don't even know the genre of this book. It could be fiction, it could be non-fiction, it could be poetry. I have absolutely no idea. I think I've said that enough times now. And this book is, I checked yesterday, 290 pages long. So it's not that long, but I am interested, curious, and slightly nervous to figure out what is going on in this book. But because this is such a challenge for me, and also something that never happens otherwise, I thought I would film a reading vlog for this book. And honestly, without further ado, let's jump right in, because I really want to figure out what this book is about. It's 2 days later and I've made some progress in Trumpet by Jackie Kay. It's probably not as much as you expect, but I believe it is enough for a first update. I honestly thought about updating you yesterday, but I was on page 13 or something and I thought that is not enough for an update. Now, however, I made it up to page 41 and I do think that's enough to share some first thoughts on this book. Because also the book starts out with a sort of chatter? What's wrong? Oh my god. What is wrong? The book starts out with a sort of chapter heading. That's what I was going to say. And it's called House and Home. And there aren't really chapters like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, the way there are in like fantasy novels and romance novels and so on. But I've now made it up to another heading that says People, the Doctor. And so I felt like this was a good place to stop reading for now. I'm still not quite sure about this book. The thing is, at first I thought it was non-fiction because it starts out with a person, the narrator. Her name's Millie. I found that out by now. She is telling this story from first POV, first person POV. That's what it's called. And it starts out with her having just very recently lost her husband. Like, it was just a few weeks ago, so really not that long ago. And she is grieving about her husband, as most people do when they lose a loved one. Anyway, that's how the book starts out. And at first I thought this is non-fiction because the name of the narrator was never mentioned. And then at some point it became clear that the narrator seems to be a different person than the author. And so now I think this is fiction after all. I know this sounds kind of stupid, but you remember that I'm going into this book absolutely blindly and I don't even know the genre. So I'm puzzling about that. Yes, I am. But currently I do believe this is fiction. And as I already mentioned, Millie has very recently lost her husband. so far this story is being told in a mix between present day situations and descriptions and flashbacks, but they blend into each other so much that sometimes I've been reading like a whole page of a flashback and only then realize that this is a flashback and this is not actually happening in the present. Present. My God, what is wrong with my brain? Or other times, Millie, the narrator, will have an internal monologue and like sort of recollect memories of things that happened in the past. But they blend into the present so much sometimes that I struggle to pinpoint those, and it sometimes takes me too much time, honestly, to realize that, oh wait, this is not actually what the person is doing right now. This is them recalling memories. And sometimes I enjoy that in like fantasy books, for example, when there's this big question of what is going on. Is this real? Is this a dream? Like, what's happening? But in this book, I am being confused too often by those moments, and it's not really fun anymore at this point, honestly. It just happens too frequently and I'm confused too often for it to still give me a sort of excitement of, ooh, I want to know what's going on. But yeah, Millie has just recently lost her husband. His name was Joss, and he was apparently a famous jazz musician, and he could play the trumpet, which I'm guessing has to do with the title of this book. Now, Joss apparently died of some sort of sickness. There hasn't really been any details mentioned. Most of the things have just been sort of alluded to. Also, given that he was a famous musician, Millie is literally being hunted by paparazzi and reporters. They're literally waiting in front of her house in order to interview her, ask her questions, and snap pictures. Most of the time, snap pictures that she doesn't want them to snap. Like, I don't know, when this woman is grieving her husband. So obviously she doesn't look her best. She's grieving, you know, what else am I gonna say? It's a horrible thing to lose a loved one, and it's a horrible thing to go through grief. Everybody deals with it differently, obviously, but I think you can agree on the fact that it is no fun whatsoever at all. But to imagine that there's strangers waiting in front of your house all the time, snapping pictures of you while you're taking out the trash in your pajamas and trying to ask questions that shouldn't be their business, and then printing all that in newspapers for I don't know how many hundred or thousands of people to read, sounds like an absolute freaking nightmare. Not gonna lie. So Millie has decided to go to a sort of holiday home that she apparently owns and she used to travel to with Joss, and it's in a rather remote village, it seems. So it's more quiet there. And we're basically following her as she's kind of navigating this loss and navigating this grief and recalling memories every now and then of their wedding and their first dates and stuff like that. It's obviously a very, well, it's not a fun read as such, because the topic of grief is very heavy in this book. And as I already mentioned, the writing style often confuses me and I find it hard to follow it sometimes. It doesn't really flow that well at some points. I'm here to give you an update on Trumpet because I've managed to make it up to the halfway point. I am on page 151, which I am thinking might be way past the halfway point already, because I did see that the last couple of pages of this book are like an afterword, which is an interview with the author of this book. And so I thought that this book was 290 pages long this whole time, but since the afterword is not really part of the book, the actual book might only be 278 pages long, which would mean that I'm way past the halfway point already. But anyway, does that really matter? No. The point is, I thought this was a good place in the book to give you another update. Also, by the way, so sorry about the way the last update ended. I usually switch between two batteries for my camera, and one of them is always in the camera and the other is charged as a backup. This time around, I only had the battery that was in my camera and it wasn't fully charged either, because it had just been too long since I filmed anything. So once the battery died on me, I didn't have my usual backup battery to change to, and I didn't have time to wait for either of the batteries to be charged enough to finish that update in a proper way. So yeah, sorry about that, but I honestly think I was done saying everything that I had wanted to say. Since the last time I updated you, we have seen more snippets, sort of the way the wife, so Millie, is dealing with the death of her husband. But we've also gotten bits and pieces of the son, Coleman, and we're now seeing the way he's dealing with the loss of his father, the way he's dealing with this grief. But also there is a certain aspect about Joss's life. I don't want to go into too many details because I'm not sure if this would be a spoiler, especially because I have no idea how this book is being marketed. So I just want to be vague here, just to be safe. There's this certain aspect of Joss's life that Millie, his wife, knew about, but basically nobody else knew about this, especially not the public. And he was a famous trumpet jazz musician, trumpet player, jazz musician, and nobody knew about this, not even his own son, Coleman. So This aspect of Joss's life was now revealed upon his death, obviously without his consent because he's dead. He didn't have a say in this anymore, and his wife didn't have a say in this either. So this aspect was revealed to the son, Coleman, and we're also seeing him grappling with the fact that his father and his mother never, his whole life, he's in his 30s or something, I think, never told him about this, and he kind of feels like they lied to him or they betrayed him, that sort of thing. He's incredibly angry. He's incredibly angry. He's not coping well, if I may say so. But he agreed to talk to a journalist about his father, basically, because this journalist wants to write a book about him, and she offered Coleman money to give her details about his father's life, like spill the tea basically. And Coleman, because he's so angry with his father and his mother, and he, I guess, needs the money, he agreed. So we're basically seeing a point of view where he talks to this journalist, and his, I'm gonna call them chapters. They're not like traditional chapters, but I'll call them chapters. Do truly feel the way it feels when somebody's sitting opposite you and telling you a story. Like, Coleman keeps jumping between different trains of thoughts, and sometimes he will tell a story and then come to a detail and add more context, but by adding more context he basically tells a whole nother story, and he kind of gets sidetracked and stuff like that. It truly feels like somebody's telling a story just the way it comes to their mind, and so that I feel like is really well written. Also, every now and then, like between Coleman and his mother's POVs, we're getting chapters from other people. There are the people that dealt with Joss upon his death, like the doctor that first came to the house and wrote the death certificate, and then like the, God, what's he called? The funeral director and stuff like that. And these chapters are always written from third-person POV. Meanwhile, Coleman's and Millie's chapters are written from first-person POV. So these chapters about the other people always feel almost a bit like in a crime show or a crime mystery movie, where you're being introduced to all of the different people involved, like the victims and the suspects and other people involved and stuff like that. It almost feels a bit like that, and I am enjoying that type of format. But here comes the big but: enjoying it almost feels wrong. And I feel like that is the main problem I have with this book, is that I'm not enjoying it. And that is not because this is a bad book by any means. I don't think that. I don't think I can evaluate this book very well, because I don't typically read books like this. Like, I tend to read fantasy and romance novels. So this is so out of my comfort zone and outside of the realm that I usually tread, that I don't know how to evaluate this. I'm probably not even gonna give it a star rating at the end of reading it, but I can't say that I'm enjoying it, because the main topics in this book are loss of a loved one and grief and death So neither of those topics are in any way fun, obviously, and they're all very heavy topics, and it's just I'm slowly starting to feel this book weigh on my mind and my mood a little, where I just say I'd rather not read this book right before bed because it could give me issues with my sleep. I don't know, but it's starting to kind of weigh on me. It's not that bad that I would DNF this. Like, if this were really truly troubling me to the core, I would DNF this if it were too much for me and I couldn't handle it. It's not that, but I do feel it weighing on me, which I do think is normal. It's not just some lightweight book that doesn't do anything to me. Like, I'm feeling it just weigh on my system. I don't know how else to describe this. So I really can't say that I'm enjoying it. And that is also the reason why I kind of want to be done with this book, which is not, I don't mean that in a negative way, as in like, oh, this book is so bad or it gets on my nerves and I want to get it over with. No, it's just that I would rather spend only 1 week with these heavy topics weighing on my mind than 2 weeks. And I think that makes sense. I feel like I've gotten warmer with the writing style, and that definitely makes it easier too. Shortly before I started this update, I read 2 chapters that kind of confused me a bit again. Like, that's the thing with this book. There's a lot of, like, basically 95% of this book is telling and not showing. I feel like that is really what's confusing me, because I'm used to other things, like more showing, not this much telling. And oftentimes it will jump between topics and contexts and thoughts, the way a person would jump between thoughts and memories and stuff like that when they're actually thinking. So it feels quite realistic in a lot of ways, but then again, that often confuses me because I'm in the head of somebody else, and that sometimes feels weird and confusing because obviously everybody's brain and thought processes work differently. I guess that's it. I'm not sure. A lot of this book makes me feel so like I don't know what it's doing to me. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know what to do with a lot of chapters. Like, sometimes there will be pages upon pages where I just think, okay, what is this supposed to tell me? I feel like if I spent more time with this book and I really picked it apart, I would get there. But that's not really how I read, because that would feel much more like a school read sort of way. I'll probably update you once I'm done with this book, I'm guessing, because there's probably not too much to update you on in between, and also I don't want to spoil anything, so yeah, I'll probably update you once I'm done with this. I'm here to give you one final update on Trumpet by Jackie Kay. I finished this book a couple of days ago, 2 days ago to be exact, and honestly, I don't have too much to say that is new and that I haven't said in previous updates, but I obviously still wanted to give you a final update. I'm gonna try to keep it brief here. The thing about this book is, there are many things about this book. One being that these, what was it, 290, 278, I think, pages, felt so much longer. This book, honestly, at some points felt like it was a 400, 500 page book, even though it was not even 300 pages long. By the end of it, I was totally dragging my feet through this. It's just that it deals with incredibly heavy topics. The main topic in this book is grief and losing a loved one, losing a parent. It's just a very heavy topic, a very complex topic, a very depressing topic. But this book also deals with things like transphobia, homophobia, fat phobia, racism, and all of those topics are incredibly complex and honestly, for me personally, incredibly depressing most of the times, because I just cannot fathom why people would feel so much hatred toward a person just because they are something that they in most cases cannot change and like didn't choose. To be fair, those topics were, in my opinion, tackled really well. It's just difficult to say how I liked this book, because saying I enjoyed it would be A, a lie, and B, wouldn't feel right. Just because of the topics this book deals with, it doesn't feel right to say I enjoyed this book, which also I didn't. Simply because these topics are not meant to be enjoyed, I think. And I feel like there's two different ways to sort of talk about this book. There's the way that I could judge this book by whether or not it gave me what I'm usually looking for in my books. And there's also the way that I could judge this book by whether or not it achieved to do what it meant to do, what it tried to do. And honestly, I'm not quite sure what this book tried to do or what the author tried to do with it, so I'm just not gonna judge it by that. But judging this book by whether or not it gave me what I'm usually looking for in books feels wrong too, because I usually choose my books in order to escape from the real world, in order to like follow characters on their fantasy mission or follow characters as they fall in love with each other. I usually read books for some sort of enjoyment, whether it's the joy of the characters finally falling in love, or whether it's the joy of the characters managing to pull off their mission, or whether it's the joy of, I don't know, the detective figuring out the crime case, or whether it's the thrill of the characters being hunted and me fearing for their life and then they make it out alive, you know, that sort of thing. I'm usually looking for this type of excitement in books, and this book obviously gave me none of that, simply because that's not what this is about. But that was simply why I did not really like this book. Also because I feel like it was weighing heavy on me and my mind starting from a certain point, and that never really had a sort of conclusion. As in, sometimes things weigh heavy on your mind and then at some point you figure out how to lighten this weight, and then maybe even you will feel like it was all worth it in some sort of way, and it trained you a lesson or whatever, or you made a mistake and that was a lesson for you. But I don't feel like this book was any of that. I don't feel like it told me or showed me anything new. None of this was new information. I already knew that there's transphobic, homophobic, and racist assholes out in the world. I already knew that grieving a loved one is an absolutely horrible scenario. I already knew that some journalists have exactly zero integrity and zero morals. Speaking of which, one of the characters in this book, the son of the recently deceased person, was, in my personal opinion, 95% of this book deeply unlikable, not relatable for me personally in almost no way. Like, there's one single thing that I can understand. It's the fact that he was incredibly shocked by his father's secret that was revealed upon his death, and that he had to figure out how to deal with that first. Like, I get that, that's fine. But other than that, as I already said, I don't feel like this book gave me anything new. I don't feel like this gave me anything to ponder on. Like, sometimes books will give you a sort of spark to think about for days and weeks and months to come. I don't feel like this book did that to me. I don't feel like I took anything away from this book, and possibly that's my fault. For me personally, this book just was there, and by the end of it I was so incredibly ready to be done with it. I was so incredibly ready to move on to another book, and maybe I'm going to think differently about this in a couple of weeks or months or years, but as of right now, a couple of days after finishing this book, I don't feel like it stuck with me in any way. I don't feel like it gave me a new perspective on anything. I don't feel like it broadened my horizon on anything. I don't feel like the experience of reading this book gave me anything. I don't know how else to say this, and that's probably all I have to say about this book. Anyway, if you want to read about these topics like grief and transphobia, homophobia, racism, etc., this book might actually be for you. I'm not saying this is a bad book at all. I'm just saying it wasn't for me because I was not able to take anything away from it. If you have read this book, honestly, maybe let me know in the comments, because I would love to hear your thoughts and opinion on this book. But anyway, this is the end of the vlog now. I really hope you enjoyed. Consider giving this video a thumbs up if you did, and maybe subscribe to my channel. And other than that, I will let you guys go now after I went on a tangent that was way too long again. But anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go now and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye!